Yes, good morning. Let me turn that off. Don't need it right now. But yes, today, this is December the 1st, and today we are going to talk about the Enlightenment. Now, hopefully, you took the time to watch that very short video about Edward Jenner and the smallpox vaccine. I thought it was apropos given the fact that we're in the midst of a global pandemic and we're waiting on a vaccine that will provide some relief from this disease that has spread around the world. Well, in the 18th century, of course, they didn't have such a vaccine, and smallpox was a killer. I mean, you saw the statistic if you watched the cute little video, which I can't show you. I can't put that on the screen. I can give you the video. You can look at it yourself. But smallpox in the 18th century killed 400,000 people per year. And you may or may not have noticed, hopefully you do know, that one of the biggest killers of Native Americans, Indians, was disease that literally would just wipe out entire villages of Native Americans because they had no immunity. And smallpox was an ugly disease. I mean, the name smallpox means that on your skin it would manifest itself in lesions, and the lesions would scar, and those lesions were called pox. And it was ugly. And if you notice where the film talks about how um, milkmaids did not get the disease, and milkmaids were renowned for their beauty because they had the whole skin, they had the unmolested skin from the smallpox vaccine. And then Edward Jenner did his work. By the way, you do know that the word vaccine comes from the Latin vacca, which means cow. Cows, milkmaids, cows. Yes, quite interesting. And so today, though, we're going to talk a little, we're going to go blow through some inventors of the age of science and their accomplishments. And hopefully you have this pulled up. I'll give you a second to do that while I enjoy my coffee, caffeine. Yes. We all have our addictions. Mine is this. In fact, while you're pulling that up, let me show you some pictures. How about that? These are pictures of art of the Age of Reason and the Enlightenment. Let us begin, though, with this picture here. That is yours truly, and Nicholas Copernicus. That's the statue back here. And this photo was taken in Warsaw because Nicholas Copernicus was a native of Warsaw. And yeah, that's his Warsaw, Poland, not Warsaw, Kentucky. Yeah, and that is his statue. Once again, you can look and find that study guide because it will come in handy. I gave it to you a couple of days ago, I do believe. Okay, and a couple other pictures. Now we're talking about the art of the Enlightenment. The art of the Enlightenment is something called neoclassical. And the art is not just paintings and sculptures. The art is also um, literature and architecture, and like, for example, architecture. Most of us, when we think about architecture and we hear about these things, it sounds like they're a world away. Not necessarily so. In fact, let's look here. This is St. Peter and Chains Church in Cincinnati. That building right there, that's the City Hall. Yeah, the City Hall. City Hall was built in 1870, but this structure, St. Peter and Chains Church, which is an example of neoclassical, neo means new, classical is a reference to Greece and Rome, architecture, was built in, wait for it, 1840. Still stands, still used today, and what does it look like? What does the front of it look like? The front of it, these columns here, would give you the inclination that you're entering a Greek or Roman structure, which is the intent of neoclassicism. I mean, it's the same reason why when you go to Washington, D.C. or Frankfurt, the government buildings look like this. The government of this country in particular wanted everyone to know that this country is a reflection of Greece and Rome. And remember that this country was founded in 1776, 1783, 1791, whatever you want to say, but it was right dead in the middle of the Enlightenment. And this was the architecture of the time. Yeah, so let's look here. That's the outside. This, yes, is the inside. And by the way, you don't have to have special permission to visit this church, nor do you have to pay an admission. You just have to be able to make sure that there's not a mass going on inside. The doors of this church are open most of the day, every day. And if you look once again inside this St. Peter and Chains Church, St. Peter and Chains Cathedral, which is the primary cathedral of the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, on the inside, it too looks like what? A Greek temple, even so far as the lettering. And if you look on either side of the walls, the art of the Stations of the Cross are made to look like the decorations of a Grecian urn. Okay, very good. Now, this is a picture of the most important person in American history. The other guy is George Washington. Ta-da! Yeah, that picture was taken. I went to visit the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. I think in 1983. Man, was I hot. And this is a very famous statue by a sculptor named, his name was Green. His last name was Green. But notice that George Washington here is wearing a Roman tunic. And that's not because the artist had some kind of fetish about Washington. Once again, it was the art form of the era, neoclassicism. They wanted to depict George Washington as a Roman senator. That's neoclassicism, literally. By the same token, let's look here. I took this picture at the Art Institute of Chicago. This is a statue of Louis XV of France, who was a king during this period. And notice, same thing. Instead of being dressed as a king, he's wearing the garb of a Roman emperor. The skirt, the leggings, the sandals, the sword, and, that's neoclassical art. A couple more things before we go on with something else. Yes, this guy here. This was taken in Edinburgh, Scotland. And if you're wondering, Mr. Horton, do you like to travel? I love to travel. Travel is the best gift that you can give yourself. And I'm telling you that, if you ever get a chance to travel, you jump on it. And I'm not talking about going to stupid beaches. I'm talking about going and seeing something that's different from where you live, a place that maybe doesn't have shopping malls or, that sort of stuff. Yeah, this is Edinburgh, Scotland. This is on the Royal Mile, and this is a statue of your friend and mine, Adam Smith. Adam Smith was the major economic thought thinker of the Enlightenment. He wrote the book, The Wealth of Nations, which basically set up the system that we now have in economics, and that is of free enterprise. Why does gasoline cost $1.79 yesterday? Today it costs $2.09. The answer is in supply and demand. The people who sell that gasoline will sell it at the lowest price, actually the highest price they think they can get for it. And why do they keep the price so low? Because the gas station across the street If they keep their price too high, we'll undersell them. Adam Smith said that's how it's supposed to work. Okay, see how much we're learning? Put these guys away. So yes, let's go back here, shall we? During the mid-1500s, scientists began to question accepted beliefs and make new theories based on logic, reason, and experimentation. As it says that first, let's make a list of people, scientists, inventors you need to know. Geocentric theory, heliocentric theory. I believe they're on your matching test. Geo means earth-centered. Helio is a reference to the sun. Earth-centered, the earth-centered theory of the universe, and the sun-centered theory of the universe. The guy who came up with the earth-centered theory of the universe was this guy here, Ptolemy. I talked about him yesterday. He believed that the earth was the center of the universe and all planets revolved around it. And the Roman Catholic Church said, you know what, that guy's right. And I know I'm speeding through this, but we went over it yesterday. Nicholas Copernicus, that statue that I just showed you, was a Roman Catholic churchman who, during his observations, said, no, that it is the sun that is the center of the universe. Although Nicholas Copernicus thought that all planets, including the Earth, moved around the sun in perfect circles, which, as you know, is not true. Their orbits are elliptical, egg-shaped. Tycho Brahe was another scientific researcher. I really don't know of any observations he made, except he kind of served as a link between Nicholas Copernicus and his Tycho Brahe's favorite student, Johann Kepler. Kepler's laws of interplanetary motion. That planets move in an elliptical orbit, that the speed of the planet increases as it nears the sun, that there exists a mathematical relationship that describes the planet's distance from the sun and the speed at which it completes its revolution. You say, well, what does that mean? It just means this. How many days are in a year? 365 and a quarter days. Does that amount of time change? Answer, no. It's exact. And so there exists a mathematical relationship that describes a planet's, yeah, that's what it means. All of these guys we're talking about, Nicholas Copernicus, Tycho Brahe, Johann Kepler, Galileo Galilei, before they were anything else, before they were astronomers, they were mathematicians. They thought, and probably rightfully so, that the secrets of the universe could be unlocked with math. Galileo Galilei wrote the book Starry Messenger and Dialogue concerning the two chief world systems. It is also worth noting Galileo invented the telescope, was the first person to see craters on the moon with his telescope. And yes, he published these books which talked about the sun being the center of the universe, and he got in big trouble with the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah, they don't like having their word disputed. And so, yes, he was arrested. He went before the tribunal. He pled his case, and they spared his life. I mean, he could have been burned at the stake. They spared his life, but put him under house arrest the rest of his life. Like I says, legend has it that on his deathbed, he went, Scientific method was invented by a guy named Francis Bacon. And the scientific method is the same scientific method that your teachers teach you in experimentation. It's the way things are worked out. It's the way that the coronavirus vaccine has been developed. You make an observation, you make a guess, a hypothesis, a guess about something to do with that observation, and then you experiment to eliminate falsehoods. And after you experiment enough, you eventually make a conclusion that is not necessarily a fact. Not necessarily. But yes, Francis Bacon comes up with this thing called empiricism. Empiricism is the idea that all things should be questioned. All things, except nothing. As simply, somebody tells you something, you're supposed to believe it. No, you want proof. That is empiricism. That is the scientific method. And then comes Rene Descartes. There's a problem with pure empiricism, and that is this: that if you simply doubt everything, how can you be sure of anything? And so he comes up with that. Cognito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. In other words, he said, if you doubt everything, he finally comes up with this philosophy. He says, well, if I'm thinking, then I must exist. And then he builds an entire scientific philosophy from that. Yes. Isaac Newton, probably the biggest thinker of the age of science and the age of reason. A&E, Arts and Entertainment, the television station, right at the turn of the century, the turn of the millennium, the turn of the century, and the turn of the millennium, they created this list of the top 100 most influential people in the history of the last 1,000 years. Number one on this list, Johann Gutenberg, the inventor of the printing press. Number two, Isaac Newton. Why? Well, let's see. Isaac Newton, law of universal gravitation. And it's not just when you drop things, they fall. But also, this guy, he was so incredibly intelligent that kind of as an afterthought, he invented calculus. I don't understand calculus. I mean, I was going to be a math major, but when I took my first course in calculus, got a B in it, and suddenly math wasn't making sense to me anymore. I don't understand the square root of -1. Sorry. But this guy invented calculus, and the calculus has so many applications. Calculus is how we go to the moon and orbit the Earth and determine trajectories and all sorts of things like that that have to be very exact. And when the first space shot went to the moon in 1968, and Houston, the headquarters, radioed Apollo and the space module and said, "Who's driving up there?" And I remember the pilot said, "I think Isaac Newton," and that's a reference to the fact that this was made possible through Isaac Newton. Okay, he 3 laws of interplanetary, 3 laws of motion. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest. Objects in motion tend to stay at motion. Every object in the universe has an attraction for every other object in the universe, and that attraction is dependent upon weight and mass. And every action has an equal and opposite reaction. There it is. Yes. Deism. We're going to start off with that tomorrow, shall we? Deism. And I'm going to end us for today. But thank you for your time. And we'll get back to you tomorrow. Actually, not tomorrow. I'm sorry. Tomorrow is Wednesday. So I will not be talking to you tomorrow, but you do have that matching thing, that matching assignment. And take the time to do that, and use that will be for tomorrow. Thank you all so much.